Welcome to the Forest Over Story podcast. This podcast explores forest stewardship in the Pacific Northwest, helping landowners and professionals gain new insights and information in the field of forest management. The Forest Over Story is a product of the Washington State University Extension Forestry Program and is supported by the Washington Department of Natural Resources and the Society of American Foresters. All right, well, welcome back to the Forest Over Story podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Schultz, Extension Forester for Washington State University. Glad to be back after handing a few episodes off to Kevin. It's just me today, but I have an excellent guest to join and chat about something that I think will interest a lot of folks, and that is mushrooms. We love them. This guy knows how to grow them. Today, we're going to be talking about forest cultivated mushroom systems, something that I get a lot of questions about in my day-to-day. I'm very excited to finally be covering this on the podcast. And I have with me Justin O'Day, a fellow extensioner here. Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Patrick?
I'm good. Enjoying the summer weather. Seems like the rain's gone and we're actually now in the heat of mushroom season, as you know,
Right.
for certain kinds.
Just
So
rushed
it's very,
in.
yeah. So before we dig into the mushrooms, obviously we wanted to get to know who you are. I already gave away that you work for Extension, but can you tell us a little bit about your position and what you do at Extension, maybe where you came from, how you got into that?
Yeah. So I am also with WSU Extension, as Patrick mentioned, and I'm based in Vancouver, Washington, so just north of Portland, Oregon, in the metro area. And I generally work with farmers. I'm an ag agent, not a forestry agent, but this kind of crosses over. Agroforestry kind of crosses those two disciplines together. And but mostly I work with farmers trying to adapt to urbanization because we're in such a urbanizing region down here, and a lot of the historic farmland is at threat in this area because of development, and really puts the pressure on for farmers to make a viable living. And mushrooms is one of those things that we've kind of looked into because it can have a small footprint. um, and I will also work on other specialty crops too. Anything that can sort of bring in a fairly high dollar per acre gross value. I I I look into those kind of crops and explore those and try and see if they're a good option for the growers in the area.
Right, yeah, that this makes sense. If anyone listening has ever visited the Vancouver farm, it's called the Heritage Farm. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it's the 78th Street Heritage Farm, and it used to be a WSU experiment station. Um, it's a 79-acre property, and it was a WSU experiment station till 2008, and then it got handed back over to the county, and now the county runs it, but WSU Extension is still stationed here, and the farm lets me do kind of experiment station type work just on a more shoestring budget and capacity.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and if anyone's ever been there, it's smack in the suburbs, so a really good example of what you're talking about with
yeah,
farmers kind of dealing with that encroachment of suburban sprawl and
yeah,
trying to make a living in that context. It can be tough.
yep,
Yeah, so
indeed.
I guess you already alluded to it, but mushroom production, something that is obviously, you said low footprint. We'll talk about a little bit more what goes into it, but a little bit low input, but potentially lots of bang for their buck, or I guess the other way
Bang
around.
for your space, I guess.
Yeah,
Buck,
right.
buck for your space.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Um, so was that the impetus for you getting involved for this alone, or did you have a
Uh,
personal interest in mushrooms?
yeah, a little bit of everything, really. There, people kept telling me there was a lot of interest in mushroom production, and I kept hearing it too from every now and then from people, and but I I had worked on a CSA way back in like 1999, and they had shiitake that they were growing on logs, which is the traditional method that we're exploring here with our research. Um, and yeah, they just had it as part of their CSA. So kind of had this idea of something. It's something that diversified farms could integrate into what they already produce and kind of maybe get a market edge or like pick up some new CSA customers, improve retention and just on top of just making money off the mushrooms.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's good. That's a really good segue to what I wanted to ask you next, which is basically what are forest cultivated mushroom systems? Like what at their core, what are they and how do they
yeah,
differ from whatever normal type of production it is? I don't think everyone knows exactly where the mushrooms come from that they get in the grocery store and how what
yeah,
we're doing is a little bit different.
yeah. So chances are, if you've had anything except for button mushrooms that you've bought in the grocery store, and maybe even at the farmer's market, it was probably grown indoors on some kind of substrate, which is like the food for mushrooms. And often that substrate is like sawdust, it might be grain, anything that's, high, has a lot of carbon in it. Just mushrooms need to eat just like everything else. And that's what they're good at eating is this sort of high carbon substrates. And yeah, like I said, most of those are grown in indoor climate controlled facilities, which is it's actually like a really good way to produce mushrooms. Like you can produce a lot that way, but you also, if you're going to get into it, you've got to have the capital or the means to to build one of those facilities or to like
Right.
repurpose something to make it work right. Um, and then button mushrooms are sort of grown very differently. They're grown on large compost beds, basically. Also indoors, though, but just a really different system because they grow on this like compost as opposed to uh, something more pure, like pure grain or pure wood.
You're right. I mean, it's a really interesting or a really efficient way to grow
Yeah,
mushrooms, but it's not necessarily the traditional way.
yeah,
Um,
and not the most
and
accessible for some people
yes,
starting out.
right, yeah, and so forest cultivated mushrooms, on the other hand, can you tell us a little bit more about what those look like?
Yeah, yeah. So, so generally, when I'm talking about forest cultivated mushroom systems, um, in its most general sense, I'm talking about mostly shiitake mushrooms. They're kind of the classic and the staple of a forest cultivated mushroom system. And the reason why we call it that is because they're grown on logs. They're grown on broadleaf tree logs, and those logs, once they're inoculated with shiitake, they're called bolts. You'll hear me say that a whole bunch, bolts. Um, and that's a traditional growing practice that started in China, but the way that we do it now really was developed in Japan during the 1930s, 40s, and that's where it kind of took off as a big thing. And in Japan, you still have growers that grow mushrooms in a forest cultivated system on a large scale. Even those are most of the mushrooms produced in that country and worldwide are produced indoors. There's a lot of larger scale growers still in Japan. And then in about the early 1980s or so, there was a big uptick in those systems developing at least in the United States. I'm not sure about Canada. Um, and that was due to a paper that was written by a USDA forester researcher who went to Japan and learned about the shiitake production. And since then, extension, mostly Cornell and University of Missouri and some in University of Vermont, um, developed and sort of adapted those Japanese systems to the East Coast, to the Eastern woodlands. Um, but nobody had really dug into it that we could find, at least in the West Coast, even though there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, that is the perfect start to talk about the work that you've been doing. And I should disclose to the audience, I should say, we've been doing, you've led this research for several years now, but you were kind enough to include me way back in 2019 when this all started. So I'm bearing my bias on this, my excitement around this topic a little bit, because I've been helping you with this work, for
Since the
several years.
beginning.
Yeah, several years now. It's hard to
Yeah,
believe, honestly.
yeah.
And it was. I mean, I remember writing that first, I don't know if it was like a pre-proposal or what, but we were putting together
Hmm.
that literature review, and just acknowledging this glaring gap in knowledge around any sort of best management practices for doing this in the Pacific Northwest. Every piece of information you could find seemed to be from the East Coast, with a few notable examples.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so maybe you can start by talking about, those first trials and what the goals were,
yeah,
to learn about how to do this out here.
yeah. So, um, yeah, it was 2019 when we wrote that first proposal and ended up getting it. And we needed to sort of figure out what we wanted to explore first to try and adapt it to this region. Um, I guess number one, we knew that we didn't have the same species that they had on the East Coast. So the timber that was available to us was just largely totally different. Um, and then we would encounter every now and then some kind of story about like a shiitake failure. And I remember also Kevin Zobrist, your cohort, he had made a short video on just sort of doing it at home on a hobby
Right.
scale. And I remembered him talking about alluding to something about failures and the logs getting too dry. And that kind of highlighted the other major difference between growing mushrooms in the Northwest versus growing them in the East Coast was just our precipitation patterns are really different. Even though everybody sort of thinks of the Northwest as this like just drenched in rain, at least the west of the Cascades. Um, a lot of the west side gets pretty pretty dry after about now, right around now, until mid September or so, and there's just a pretty big opportunity to not have enough moisture for the fungus to stay viable in a log or in a bolt.
Right.
So those were sort of the two major things that we tried to tackle right off from the beginning was looking at species availability, and what would work for shiitake, and then just moisture management, trying to manage the moisture of the log to keep the shiitake fungus viable.
Yeah, yeah, no, and to clarify for the audience too, this research really took place in Western Washington predominantly, and
Yeah,
we've yet to explore it on the east side of the state, or interior Washington.
yeah,
Although I have heard from some people trying to do it out there, particularly in like
the
riparian
Northeast.
areas, or northeast Washington, where it's a little more moist,
Yep.
um, with some success. So I
Yeah,
mean, that's a whole nother world to explore, though, for sure.
it is. It is.
Yeah, and I realize, I don't know if we really, maybe a good, um, next step before we kind of dig into the what we found in those early trials is to describe the process of
Sure.
cultivating shiitake. I think we maybe kind of glazed over a little bit.
Yeah, and I also didn't mention that we kind of looked into totem systems too, which is is a little different and is used for lion's mane and oyster mushrooms on the
Yeah.
East Coast.
Yeah. Discuss that a little bit too, because I do get I get as much as questions I get
Yeah,
about shiitake. I get a lot about lion's mane and oyster.
yeah, and oyster. Me too. I get a lot of questions. Yeah, so typically, at least the information that's come out of the East Coast is that these bolt systems, and bolts are typically 3 to 4 feet long and about 4 to 6 inches in diameter. So they're kind of like long and thin. And then larger diameter logs are used for what's called these totem systems, where you kind of like stack one foot worth of, say, like a 12-inch diameter log on top of another foot, and then you put it like a cap on top, like a 2-inch cap. And in between all those pieces, you put what's called spawn, which is just sawdust that's got the mushroom mycelium in it, which is it's sort of the vegetative part. It's kind of like if you take a cutting from an apple tree and you put it on another piece of rootstock, it will grow and stay the same variety. It's the same thing. If you just take a piece of that mycelium and grow it in a separate it into another substrate, it's going to be the same strain. Um, and yeah, so you fill these gaps with spawn and try and colonize the totem. And we tried those here in Vancouver, and there was just a lot of issues with them, looking at them at least from like a commercial production standpoint, from doing, for doing it for market. And so we kind of abandoned those because the shiitake panned out so much better in the end.
Right.
Typically, what we've heard is that they don't that lion's mane and oyster don't perform as well in a bolt for some reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it is interesting, and we do get a ton of questions about it, and there's like you said, opportunity for a hobbyist potentially, but maybe just not
Hmm.
quite reliable enough,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the totem style of
Yeah.
cultivation, for commercial.
Yeah. It was pretty difficult to manage the moisture when
Yeah.
with those totems, and it was really really hard to manage the mushroom quality. Those were the two main downsides, and the yield just it wasn't quite there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason shiitake is so popular, even in the
There
eastern
is.
U.S.
Yeah.
It's just incredibly reliable and vigorous.
Yeah.
Um, but not so vigorous that it'll just grow anywhere, and that's why
No.
best management practices are important.
Right.
So maybe kind of back to the bolt system, we harvest these logs fresh. These are living trees that we harvest, um, and then inoculate, and
Hmm.
then and doing that by drilling holes and filling them with spawn, as you said. What happens after that?
Yeah, so once you drill the hole, you fill the hole with spawn, and then you usually usually if you're using what's called a sawdust substrate, you kind of pack it into the hole. You pack this mycelium infused um, spawn into the hole, and then you cover it with something like wax to seal it off and to keep it moist. And then you kind of just end up putting those logs into the forest, which is enter the forest cultivated part of it, besides the
Right.
log
Yeah.
itself. So you put those logs into the forest to have at least a full year of what's called the spawn run, and that's when that spawn runs through the log and colonizes the entire thing. Hopefully, if you've managed it well,
Right.
right? Um, and Yeah, I was going to mention too that it typically runs through the sapwood of the log. So the hole's usually drilled right into the sapwood, so the sort of the outer edge. It's about an inch or so that we drill in, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and those that aren't familiar, the alternate to sapwood would be heartwood, which is more interior wood when you're looking at the inside of a tree, and that's older, sort of what I like to call retired sapwood. That's
yeah, that's a
not
good way
not
to
really,
put it.
yeah, it's not really having that water drawing function anymore, but still serves a structural purpose.
Yeah, Yeah, and so unlike any shiitake log that where you can see the heartwood really well, you can see the difference. Like the mycelium grows mostly in the sapwood for sure.
Right. So then after the spawn run, you say we've done everything right. That's when you're actually able to harvest. And that is done by force fruiting the log by soaking it in cold water, correct?
Yep, cold
Right.
water, and yeah, in Japan they'll do this anywhere from 6 to I think 24 hours. Is that what we heard when we went there?
Yeah,
I heard as little as 6,
I know. It's pretty
which
crazy.
we've never done. We've never done a 6-hour soak. We've always done 24-hour soaks.
Right.
Um, yeah, and this is sort of a thing that's really unique to shiitake, and one of the things that like helps it be a commercially viable thing
Yeah.
was this ability to force fruit by soaking the logs. And yeah, it's sort of what it sort of does is it tricks the fungus into sensing like a seasonal change, and that induces it to fruit. And typically we'll do that 3 times in a year on any given log, for a given log.
Right. Typically between around now and June,
Yeah,
or
early
May, June,
June.
into September-ish, right?
Yes, yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
September, October is the last one usually.
Yeah, and then you could just keep doing that every year until those logs stop producing,
Till
right?
they peter out, yeah. Until they've
Yeah,
consumed just about everything that the fungus is able to consume.
right, which our
Um,
data hasn't really shored up a firm number on that really
hasn't
yet,
shored
but
up a firm number, but it is looking like um, our logs that are going into their 5th year right now, you're probably noticing these too. They're kind of disintegrating.
yeah, they're
Like
getting a
they're
little sad for sure.
disintegrating, in addition to just not yielding as well. They're kind of
Yeah.
just losing their pizzazz.
Yeah, and you can pick them up and they just feel
A
so
lot
light.
lighter and
Yeah.
pulpy. Yeah, very
Mhm.
pulpy. Um,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah, so I
it's looking like maybe we could get 4 years out of it.
Right, which is pretty impressive. And another one of these things that makes these systems so attractive is, not that there's not year to year labor because you're often adding new logs every year, but a lot of that work
Mhm.
is front loaded in that first
Yeah,
year of,
yeah.
harvesting logs and inoculating. And then again, you get quite a lot out of that one log. Um,
Right, right.
you
I
know.
think of it kinda like a perennial crop, where
Mhm.
it's like you do a bunch of labor up front and then you kinda gotta wait a bit
Yeah,
because you know it's gonna return more than 1 year's worth of, harvest
right.
versus an annual crop that's just gonna produce for you once.
Yeah, no, I thank you for kind of walking through the process. I think not everyone is familiar, um, and it's important to know because we learned a lot of, well, a lot. I would say some really key lessons, tricks, whatever you want to call them, based on the research
Mhm.
around what to do along that process and different decision making steps.
Yeah, for
One of those, as
sure.
you alluded to earlier, was that moisture management is absolutely essential, which is more or less what we expected. I mean, it was confirmed that moisture management, or really that the dry summers were going to be a hurdle for
Yeah,
doing this effectively. Can you
yeah,
talk a little bit about what we found works in overcoming that?
yeah. I think, like, if there was 2 things that I could pick out that are probably behind the stories of, like, a shiitake failure,
Hmm.
you know, it's gonna be moisture loss, or it's probably gonna be, like, you use some strain that's not doing what you expect it to do.
Right.
Yeah, but the moisture one is really key that we figured out in that first set of trials that are still going in their 5th year now, but, um, it's really, really key to keep that moisture level up in that first year for the spawn run, because that kind of determines when the log is fully colonized is when it will start producing mushrooms. So you want that spawn run to be vigorous and robust. And to do that, it's got to have the moisture available to it. And yeah, so that first set of trials, we Patrick and our other colleague Stephen Bramwell did some satellite trials where you just did two different treatments. So we had a control that was just open to the air, right? We didn't do
Right.
anything to manage moisture, and then we had one other treatment where we covered the logs during the spawn run with what's called remay or floating row cover or frost blankets. Sometimes
Yep.
it's called all three of those things. Remay is a trade name, but it's what gets thrown around a lot. It's shorter to say. Um, yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a thin white breathable polyester fabric that's usually used for like row cropping vegetables. But
Right.
but we were using it to cover up these stacks of bolts over the summer. And I guess the other key aspect was we were also looking at like the idea of like irrigating the log in some form or another over the summer. And down here in Vancouver, we had a couple other treatments where one of them was we just put like buckets of water underneath the remay, so there was sort of this static humidity source, just thinking that the water is going to evaporate, and as wind blows through it's also going to evaporate, and it's going to just keep the humidity up a bit underneath there. That was the
Mm-hmm.
idea, at least. And then we had another one where we put like a misting irrigation system underneath, which was a bit of a challenge because there was always some sort of like plumbing issue, like a leak, or like we'd forget to turn it on, or the timer wouldn't work and the batteries would die. All these little things that really happened. So it was like a real research result. But the other thing was like you also had to manage how much moisture you put into the air in there, because you didn't want the logs to be literally wet during the summer, because that would have then you'd get like mold growth on the outside of the log, which
Right.
is not good either. Really, what you want is just like this sort of humid environment where the log's losing as little water as possible,
Right.
which is a challenge, because the rest of the air is, getting down below 50% humidity in the middle of the day in summer. And that's pretty challenging. Um, and so there was one fourth treatment that ended up working out better than the other ones, and that was doing the same thing essentially that we do when we try and fruit the logs. We soaked the logs in that first year for 24 hours. And this did, two things. Like we'd put the logs under the cover while they were still wet, so they kind of have this humid environment for a little while at least, during the spawn run. And then you're also just giving the log like a sort of a shot in the arm, so to speak, like a boost of moisture right before the dry season comes in the summer. And it was kind of an interesting way that we figured out that that might be something that could work. We had some logs that we were inoculating, and we had them sitting in this little trailer, and a spring storm had come through, and it sort of blew the top off of the trailer, and some rain had gotten into the very corner of the trailer, and there was part of one of the logs that we had inoculated was sort of sitting in the water. And when I pulled the log out and saw the water was sitting in there, I could see the Shiitake mycelium growing really well already on the end of the log. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Maybe we can kind of facilitate this kind of shot in the arm approach with the soaking. And
I
it's
I love
it's the
those
thing that's worked
findings that are
out.
by accident.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
always great.
yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of this one is that it's so much easier than irrigation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's definitely like the thing that it's the go-to thing that people think of doing is like you
Yeah.
go out there with like a garden hose and a sprinkler and you're watering your logs, right? Um, and they do that in Japan. Like they even have systems set up, where they're irrigating overhead. Um, but Japan is much more humid all summer compared to us.
Yeah. Yeah, and so is the Eastern
Even
United States.
Yeah, so is the Eastern U.S. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really different, but also just like you have to think about the fact that like you got to spend the time doing it, right? So you're out there holding this
Mhm.
water over for however long, or you're trying to build a plumbing system if you want it to just be stationary and on a timer. Um, and then you're dealing with timers. Uh, and most of that water is not going to go in the log. Like it's going to
Right.
run over the outside and onto the ground. And it's just, thinking about those things and seeing what happened with the soaking is why we went that route. And there's sort of this added benefit of too of like if you soak it in that first year, you know exactly what you're going to do to soak again the next year when you're going to try and fruit your logs for the first time with a forced fruiting.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting, and I was glad to figure out that that works because we've already invested in all that, limited equipment, just a tank essentially. But going
Yeah,
out and irrigating like that is a deterrent for, even a
yeah,
hobbyist, let alone a
yeah,
commercial scale grower.
yeah.
Yeah,
That said, like a lot of people are turned off by the thought of like moving the logs and putting them into soaking tanks.
that's very true.
I
Yeah.
personally don't. I personally don't. It's not something that bothers me. It's good exercise.
Mm.
And I find that it doesn't take that long, really. But some people are turned off by it for sure, and
Yeah.
they try and find ways around it.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. It kind of segues into, one question I get a lot is can we just go inoculate kind of tree, like girdle trees and go inoculate them while they're standing? And that kind of speaks to strain selection, which you mentioned earlier, and that,
Yeah,
some strains would be okay for that, but ultimately, um, in a situation like that where you're not willing to move the logs in the Pacific Northwest, whether it is going and inoculating standing trees or just keeping them in one place, and
hmm,
there's really not a good way to get moisture back in them. So you're gonna experience
right.
reduced yields, reduced colonization success, meaning you would have logs that just don't ever produce anything, and the ones that do
Yeah,
may produce less too. You know,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. So for the hobbyist, maybe, but at a commercial scale, if you're trying to have reliable harvests, it's really important. We found right
right.
to really use strains that respond
To
to a
force
forced fruiting,
fruiting. Yeah,
and to take advantage of that also for moisture management. Because in subsequent years, you're soaking them 3 times a year. You really don't have to worry about moisture management at that point.
right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Yeah, there's three strain types. There's a bunch of different strains. So there's named strains of shiitake. Um, not a huge amount that we have access to in the U.S., but there is a
Right.
number of name strains, and amongst those strains, they're grouped into these different types, and the types are in accordance with temperature and how they respond to temperature with regard to fruiting. And so there's cool weather or cold weather, there's wide range, and then there's warm weather strains. And the ones that respond to forest fruiting are almost entirely the wide range and most of the warm weather range type. The cold weather ones are the ones that spontaneously fruit, um, and they don't respond to forced fruiting.
Right. So ultimately, maybe not ideal for our climate
Not ideal for our climate.
or
It's
for
something
forest
like
culture.
if you were doing it like as a hobbyist and you wanted something that was really low, low maintenance and low risk, like, you don't care if maybe you have a failure. It might be
Right. Yeah.
something that you could do cold weather strain. The other thing about a cold weather strain is, uh, if they're fruiting spontaneously, like, without a soaking needed, uh, you don't if you're not, like, looking at those logs every day, you can miss the fruiting and then the quality gets shot.
Yeah.
There's kind of like this whole slew of downsides that we found out because we did try a cold weather strain, uh, and it just didn't pan out from numerous angles,
Right.
for growing for market.
And
Yeah,
no one wants soggy shiitakes,
nobody wants
really.
soggy shiitakes, and that is when they fruit most, is during the rainiest part of our year.
Right. Exactly.
So that's a whole can of worms
So
there.
I want to say too, at the end of this episode, we'll share some resources with some opportunities to learn more about the technical side of things.
Yeah.
So you don't have to remember everything you're hearing, and there's a lot more that goes into this. But we that moisture management. I've given a couple talks on this, and it's people get tired of how much I talk about moisture management. So it makes sense to talk about it here on the
Right.
podcast.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of want to segue because you alluded to it earlier. So we got that one grant in 2019, and then you applied for a SARE grant in 2022. One?
Yeah. Well, it was a
Yikes!
little confusing because we didn't get it at first, and then they
Yeah,
changed their
that's right.
mind. They changed their mind, and they did.
That's funny.
They
Yeah,
did
come
give
back,
it to
kids.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It started
um,
it started in 2022.
That's right. Yeah. And with this new route, I mean, there's additional research, but one of the things, and some other cool projects we'll talk about, but one of the really exciting things was that we got to take um, I guess you'd call it a research tour or a research trip to Japan last summer
Mhm.
and visit growers and researchers there and learn about how they've been doing this there for, decades, centuries. um,
Yeah.
and it was truly fascinating. And I know we gleaned some pretty cool things from seeing large operations. I could you share
Yeah.
any like thing that jumped out to you?
Yeah. I think some of the bigger take homes were that, uh there was a bit of what we were hearing kinda gave us a pat on the back in a sense that, like,
Yeah.
we it felt like we actually were doing the right things. We were figuring out the right things, and at some points, we seem to even have more technical understanding of some of the aspects than some of the people we were meeting.
Right.
Um, um, and then but by and large, I guess some of the some of the big take homes were there's big differences in the market volume, and some of the quality standards were different, and then the climate, of course, was just quite
Right.
different. Most of their precipitation comes over the summer, hot humid summers, thunderstorms, heavy rain events, whereas we're totally dry during the summer. And what that leads them to also is kind of like this opposite opposite production period where they're producing mostly in the throughout the fall and throughout the spring, whereas we're producing like from the very end of spring into very early fall throughout, over the summer basically. So their dry season is during those shoulder seasons, and our dry season is during the summer. And
Right.
that's the best time to harvest because nobody likes soggy shiitakes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think, yeah, I think maybe some other take homes were the fact that a lot of the shiitake that's produced on logs in forest systems is produced for dried shiitake because that's what they use. They use a lot of dried shiitake, and then the fresh market shiitake that is grown on logs, they tend to use high tunnels
Yeah.
or greenhouse type structures that have some sort of shading system in them. Like sometimes they had these like I don't know, you call it like black tassels that hang down from the ceiling that shade. Sometimes it
Yeah.
was just like standard shade cloth. And they use that for their quality control over the summer. It kind of like extends this. It extends the cooler season for them in the summertime. So they're able to sort of extend their season a little bit more with those structures and get a little bit more quality control out of it by bringing it into a structure that's, you know, it's not under forest canopy. A lot of the stuff that was grown under forest canopy was for dried market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting too, and maybe there's opportunities to utilize, those high tunnels and hoop houses that
Yeah.
farmers have in the off season,
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
well
that's something
here.
we've been thinking about doing for sure after
Yeah,
seeing that in Japan.
I think you're right though too. It's just a very different game. The thing I was struck by over there is that it is very much a numbers game. I mean, we saw
Mhm.
10,000 bolt operations, and they were not really worried about extracting every bit of mushroom from the log in the way that we have been really focused on,
Yeah.
sort of smaller operations, but really maximizing yield from them. And it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of that's market, right? Like you said, it's just like a
Right.
different size market, and it's been going a lot longer.
Yeah.
But I
So
agree,
it's
it was nice
treat
to
it
have
more
it.
like a commodity.
Yeah, yeah, but it was nice to have some of those things affirmed that we were on the right track.
It
That
was.
was it was a truly amazing trip to get to eat a whole bunch of shiitakes along the way.
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate to have been able to do that.
Likewise.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I think now we're kind of coming to the end. Maybe just to close out, well, you could share a little bit about where this project is going next. I mentioned
Yeah.
we have some continued trials, and then there's also a farmer mentor program
Yeah.
that we've started. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um So one of the things I guess we didn't talk about was the species or the type of log, the type of tree.
Right.
And this new project started in 2022 expands on the species that we're trialing. Uh, from the first set of trials, we found out that red alder is kind of a workhorse uh, species for producing shiitake, produces it well, has some quirky things that you have to deal with, but by and large, it's a pretty darn favorable species.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in Japan, it's almost exclusively grown on oak, and that's another species that we found. Our native oak, Gary oak or Oregon oak, um, works really well also. And then we found this. There's some non-native species too that are around the Northwest that either do kind of like okay or do really well. Um, Cultivated hazelnut, which is probably you're going to find more common in Oregon. Uh, it appears like it's going to be a really good species for producing shiitake on. Um, and then also, there's a lot of feral sweet cherry that's around, like especially in like old farming regions in the west of the Cascades. You'll find a lot of cherry, and cherry does okay. It's a pretty good species. The one thing about cherry is those logs just really last a long time, even though it doesn't particularly produce a ton of shiitake compared to say alder or oak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, this new trial expands it, and we're looking at a total of I think at least in Vancouver we have I think 8 different species altogether. We have red alder, of course. We have Gary oak, Oregon oak. Um, we have Oregon ash. We have vine maple. We have western uh, beaked hazelnut, which is our native hazelnut. Um, and then we have a couple of buckthorn or cascara, and I'm trying to remember if there's one. Oh, paper birch. Paper birch is native to the northwestern part of the state of Washington, and then sometimes you can find other, like either European or East Coast ornamental birch species that have kind of gone feral around too. So we have a bunch of gray birch down here, and so we've used that quite a bit actually, and it also performs really well, at least in the beginning. And am I missing any that you can think of? I didn't
No,
count on my fingers
no, I think that's all
how
of them,
many I had.
which is plenty. Yeah, it's quite a
Yeah,
bit, and we're also inside of those going to be, trying a host of different strains as well that
yeah,
we haven't tried yet.
yeah. We've got what, four or five wide range strains, and then I've got
Couple warm.
two warm weathers. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
so more
trying
to
to
come.
expand
This
that.
We inoculated most of those last year, and we'll have some data this season. Already
Yeah,
started flushing them, and
yeah,
um, yeah, so more to come on that and those other species, and who are the winners and losers. From the original trials too, I'll mention we did try maple, and that was unfortunately not
yeah.
not a
Big
very
leaf.
successful species.
Yeah, which was a bummer because it's the second most abundant
Right.
broadleaf species that we've got. Yeah,
And I had fantasies of a big leaf maple syrup and shiitake
just
system that,
dovetailing really well.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's too
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, we just found that the bark integrity is not really great, and that leads to like all kinds of issues with s- with not being able to retain moisture that well. They
Yeah,
they will produce, like some of them do produce, but they're higher risk. They're
for
way higher
sure.
risk. Most of the logs that I've culled out of my trials down here because they either weren't producing or like stopped producing were maples, were big leaf
Yeah,
maples.
and we had instances where it took almost 3 years for them to produce anything in some
Right,
cases, and
right.
that
Yeah,
can be very frustrating. I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Which is pretty
Um,
challenging.
yeah. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit too quickly about the farmer mentor aspect of the new project? I think it's a really exciting aspect.
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of wanted to take a different tack with this project. Typically like extension, we do workshops and we do like classes, right?
Right.
So we're bringing in a bunch of like people in for a couple hours or maybe even just a talk or like a podcast like this. And it's kind of like a really, superficial covering of a lot of different topics. And so we kind of wanted to flip that over, and we knew that there was a lot of people that were interested in this, and they were kind of like right on the precipice of probably doing it anyway or trying it or really wanting to try it. And so we thought we'd take that opportunity to to use this project as like a mentorship type project where we take what we've learned about producing shiitake in a forest cultivated system and like directly work with our growers on a more intensive sort of one-on-one, tailored to their needs, tailored to what they want to do, their capacity constraints, so on and so forth, and sort of get these growers with a solid footing, um, this sort of first crop of growers, so to speak, growing shiitakes in a forest cultivated system. And so I think we've got 12 growers right now
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
are
I've got a few in South
starting.
Puget Sound. Kevin has
Hmm.
some. You've got quite a few, and
And then
even some in Oregon.
Eric
Yeah,
Jones down in Oregon. Yeah,
yeah. I'm very excited to see where this goes, and we've already got some farmers selling shiitakes and saying it's going really well.
yeah,
Um,
it was exciting to hear.
yeah, yeah. It would be really interesting to learn about their experiences selling and marketing them, because that's something
Yeah,
we really can't do ourselves.
yeah,
Too much of.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're that's the other part of it is we're interviewing them after each year of the project to sort of, get their perspective on how things worked, what could we improve on, did it work,
yeah.
you know, is there stuff that we should change, so on and so forth.
Right. Do they want to keep doing it?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of stuff.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's great. Yeah. No, so this has been awesome, and unfortunately we've got to wrap up, but I want to make sure that people have, something to go to stay up to date on this project. And I know you've been working on a website,
Yeah.
and hopefully I'm not putting the cart before the horse by announcing it yet, because I
No,
know it's
no,
kind of still
it's
in progress.
okay.
But
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
work in progress as long as there's that caveat out there that
yeah,
it's still we're still adding to it.
right,
It's probably
yeah.
got typos and
Yeah, be sure to email Justin with all your typos
yeah,
and
all
suggestions
your
that you find.
criticisms. Yeah.
So that website, though, is called the Pacific Northwest Forest Cultivated Mushroom Growers Network,
Yeah.
and it's pnwforestmushroomgrowers.net. I will have that link in the description of the podcast as well.
Yeah.
And then I know we just submitted an extension publication focused more on hobbyist production, kind of keeping it a
Mhm.
little simpler. They'll have a lot of the things that we talked about, but tailored to someone that's just going to do a handful of logs.
Yeah,
So,
just for
so
personal
that's
use.
right, and that's just working through the system now. Hopefully, won't be too long before it's on the shelves, and people would be able to find that at forestry.wsu.edu, as well as on that same website I just mentioned, the Forest Cultivated Mushroom Growers Network. Um, and yeah, and of course, if we're doing the extension foresters, me or Kevin are doing any mushroom workshops, we'll also put it at forestry.wsu.edu. But Justin, I know you do quite a bit of your own. Is there a place that people can follow your program?
I right now I have an Instagram for my program. That's my
That's right.
main social media outlet. Yeah.
What's the handle on that?
Oh,
Do
you had to ask, didn't you?
I had to ask. It's all right. We'll find it. We'll put it in the
I
in
think
the description as
I
well.
think it's WSU extension SWWA. I think that's it.
Okay.
Southwest Washington. Yeah, SWWA, I think.
I sure if you search it and you look for the pictures of the shiitakes, you'll be in the right place. But we'll
Yeah.
also put that in the description. I know I shouldn't ask because I couldn't tell you what mine is either.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to share, Justin, before we close out?
I think we kind of gave everybody a good fire hose of information here.
Right.
So,
Yes, exactly. Well, good thing it's recorded. People can listen to it twice and process it.
yep, totally.
Well, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. Hopefully, we
Thank
can
you
have you on
too.
again in a couple years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with more info.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will be back next month with another episode of the Forest Overstory podcast. Until then, I hope you enjoy your summer. Bye.
Bye.